It's an amazing time in the culture that there would be a gathering like this, and really it indicates this evolution of consciousness. I mean, I think of it as most people are aware that physical exercise is beneficial, is actually essential for our physical well-being. And more in the collective psyche, it's being understood that if we train our attention, if we train our awareness, we actually cultivate these qualities of mental clarity, of emotional well-being, really of wisdom and compassion. I think of mindfulness training as an evolutionary strategy that maximizes our human potential, I had heard a story recently where mindfulness would have been really handy. There's a group of students, high school students in Montana, and they had 3 goats, and they painted on them they painted 1, 2, and 4, and they released them into the school. And the admin shut down the school for the day looking for goat number 3. So mindfulness of the moment, what's happening right here. And the useful definition, and Rich really was describing it beautifully, mindfulness means paying attention on purpose to the present moment and the qualities that really make a difference, and we'll be practicing together, are friendliness, interest, and non-judgment. Now, when we talk about mindfulness meditation here through the morning, we're talking about the formal practices that actually cultivate a mindful awareness. And one of the first trainings that really is at the ground level is learning to pause. I call it the sacred art of pausing because it's quite radical. We're typically rolling into the next moment with our thoughts and our behaviors. And so being able to just stop, being able to settle into what's right here, really interrupts some of our most deepest conditioning and habits. So in the spirit of the day, I thought we'd start with a collective pause. And I'd like to invite you, if you will, this is to help declutter the in-bin, to invite you to just close your eyes for a few moments. This will be our first experiential practice. So closing your eyes. And as you close your eyes, take some moments to feel your body breathing. Just feel the breath. And begin to let the breath become a more long, full, deep breath. So inhale deeply, really filling the lungs, filling the chest. And then with the out-breath, a very slow out-breath, slowly enough that you can feel the sensations of the breath as it leaves. And then again, a nice deep, full in-breath, so you really feel filled by the breath. And a slow out-breath, and see what inside your body might want to let go a little. You might even just mentally whisper, letting go. One more time. Nice, deep, full in-breath. Slow out-breath, releasing, letting go, relaxing, and then just let your breath resume in its natural rhythm. See if you can relax with the inflow and outflow. And let your senses be awake. So you're aware of the sounds around you, aware of your sensations in your body. And again, aware of the movement of the breath. And in the most deep way, perhaps, aware of your own presence right now. Just to notice the quality of your presence. Poet Martha Postlewaite says, "Do not try to save the whole world or do anything grandiose. Instead, create a clearing in the dense forest of your life and wait there patiently until the song that is your life falls into your own cupped hands and you recognize and greet it. Only then will you know how to give yourself to this world so worthy of rescue. Do not try to save the whole world or do anything grandiose. Instead, create a clearing in the dense forest of your life. Create a clearing in the dense forest of your life. If you'd like to open your eyes, please do. It's so easy to get stressed and feel like we're on our way somewhere else, to have the kind of inner mantra that there's not enough time, to feel, as William James put it, the ceaseless frenzy of always thinking we should be doing something else. And when we're in the grip of that, we lose touch with what matters to us. We lose touch with what's important. I heard about a palliative caregiver who worked with thousands of people who was by their bedside as they were dying, and she reported that the greatest single regret of the dying was, I didn't live true to myself. I lived according to the expectations of others, internalized shoulds, that I didn't live true to myself. I didn't live really from the full aliveness that's here, our creativity, our heart. Now, from an evolutionary perspective, the reason this happens is that when we get stressed, we quite regularly lose contact with the more full, mature, evolved parts of our being and get hijacked. And what I mean by hijacked is that our attention gets commandeered by the more primitive parts of our brain. And when that happens, it's really fear-based. We're operating out of fear. So what I'd like to do is take a moment to describe more how this hijacking happens, because if we understand it, then when we get stressed, we can interrupt the patterning with mindfulness. And my favorite illustration comes from psychiatrist, author, and friend Dan Siegel, who uses a model of a hand as the brain. And you might put your hand out in front of you right now, just as I'm doing. And you bring your thumb into the pad of your hand, and then wrap your 4 fingers over that. And this is your brain. It's a pretty good, realistic model of the brain. And now, just to unpack it a little bit more, if you open your hand again, the wrist is actually your spinal column going up into the brain stem at the base of the palm. And the thumb is your limbic system. And the brainstem and the limbic system act together to really regulate arousal, fight, flight, freeze, emotionality, and so on. And then these 4 fingers that wrap over, this is the cortex. And the cortex allows us to think and reason. And the frontal part of the cortex, the prefrontal cortex, and that's right behind the forehead, is really the site correlated with mindfulness and empathy. It's also, importantly, the part of our brain that regulates the subcortical, the limbic, and the brainstem. Now, the reason this is important is because when we're stressed, when we're tired, when somebody criticizes us, when we're in conflict in some way, it's very easy for us to flip our lid, okay? And what that means is, in those moments, we're no longer connected to our strongest resources, our full intelligence. We're no longer connected to wise decision-making. We're no longer connected even to moral reasoning and empathy. So what we do then, and what we are coming to realize, is that it's really critical to have an integrated brain where the prefrontal cortex is activated and strong, which is where mindfulness comes in. Now, I want to say one of the inner stressors that most makes us inclined to flip our lid, because this feels really relevant to most of us, and that is we have a pervasive, I think of it almost as an epidemic, of a fear of failure, of a sense of deficiency or inadequacy. And when we're going around with that kind of core fear of not okayness, it's much more likely to flip our lid. It shows up as self-judgment, as kind of a perfectionism. I saw a cartoon with a dog on a psychiatrist's couch, and the dog is saying, "It's always good dog this and good dog that, but is it ever a great dog, you know?" And we know what it's like. It's the sense, this chronic sense of not enough. And I remember when I was on book tour, my first book, Radical Acceptance, really focuses on what I call the trance of unworthiness. And I went to a college campus where I was doing a workshop. They had a big poster announcing it and a big picture of me, and the caption underneath was, "Something is wrong with me." So just to say that if we walk around and move through our lives with a sense of not enough, with a sense of personal failure or about to fail, it's huge suffering. It means we really can't be intimate with others because they'll find out really who we are. We can't get close. It makes it hard to take risks at work. And in a deep way, we can't relax. We can't feel at home in ourselves. And this sense of not okay is particularly virulent and exacerbated by the kind of culture we live in. Competitive, individualistic. We all have standards we have to meet. It's not like we can just naturally feel a sense of belonging to family, school, work. We have standards to meet. And one of the standards is intelligence. And I think so often of all the children that go through school and are trying to meet the kind of intelligence our culture worships, a very one band of left brain intelligence, and come out feeling stupid because they didn't meet that standard. And then, of course, there are many other standards, how we're supposed to look. The dominant culture sets the standards and often sets it on the skin color that's superior, what our sexual preferences should be, how our achievements should look. Even in spiritual communities, there are these sense of these standards of how you're supposed to be. I love this little essay. It says, if you could start the day without caffeine or pep pills, if you can be cheerful, ignoring aches and pains, if you can resist complaining and boring people with your troubles, if you can take criticism and blame without resentment, if you can face the world without lies and deceit, if you can conquer tension without medical help, if you can relax without liquor, if you could sleep without the aid of drugs, then you are probably a dog. So I want to say that the tendency to get caught in stress, to get hijacked, to live out of that fear conditioning, it's a primal part of our brain and it's natural. It's part of the story of our unfolding. And it's not the end of the evolutionary story. And so just to say, we all have the capacity for mindful awareness. Mindfulness started emerging about 75,000 to 100,000 years ago with the rapid development of mirror neurons and the emergence of this network in the prefrontal cortex. And that correlated with human evolution going on hyperdrive with the development of tools, language, collaboration. Okay? So what that means is during this period, we humans develop the capacity for a mindful awareness that includes these two wings. And one wing is the wing of being able to witness and see what's happening in the moment. And the other wing is the wing of being able to hold that with kindness, mindfulness, and heartfulness. And neuroscience confirms that when we practice meditation, we actually strengthen these two wings. An example to give you of how impactful they can be is a man who had Alzheimer's, and he'd been meditating for 10 years. He was presenting to a crowd of 100 people, and he went totally blank. He had no idea what he was supposed to say or why he was there. So what he did was he paused and he put his palms together and he just started naming what he was experiencing. Confused, and then he bowed. Embarrassed, and bowed. Afraid, bowed. Heart pounding, bowed. This went on for a bit, and then he finally said relaxing, and he bowed. And then he apologized, and as you might imagine, some people had tears in their eyes, and one person said, no one has ever given us the teachings in this way. And what had he done? Well, first, he didn't do anything. He paused. Viktor Frankl says that between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And in that space is our power and our freedom. Okay, so he paused, found that power and that freedom to respond differently. And then he began naming what he was aware of, which is a tool of mindfulness to recognize and witness what's here. The shamans say that if you can name a fear, it loses some of its power over you. So he named what he was aware of, and then he bowed, which is a way of saying yes, or saying it's okay, this is reality. It's a wise heart's response to reality. So what I'd like to do is take a few moments and give you an opportunity just to experiment with bringing these two wings of mindfulness and heartfulness to a place of stress in your life. And as a way to begin, again, I'd like to have you close your eyes. And you might pick a situation that you know triggers you. It might be something at work or at home, an important relationship, or it might trigger anxiety or anger, self-judgment. And once you have a situation in mind, just as if you're watching a movie, go to the worst part. Go to what's most difficult and just let the frame freeze there. And you might sense into, in those moments, what you're really believing. Are you believing that I'm failing or others don't care? Feeling rejected? That you're about to lose something valuable? Your health, job, money, relationship? When you're in that stressful place, what are you believing? And feel into your body and sense, what is that experience like in your body and your heart? You might even ask the question, what am I unwilling to feel? Because often it's hard for us to feel into our bodies and our hearts. And this is where we bring the two wings of attention. You can breathe and feel what's here and just begin to name what you're aware of. You might be naming anxiety, you might be naming hurt, fear, maybe squeeze in the chest or heart pounding. And see if as you name what's going on, you can just let it be there. You can say yes to it, just as this man did with bowing. Naming and just letting it be. You might deepen the letting be by even offering some kindness on purpose to what's here. When I've been very caught in situations that are emotional and difficult, sometimes I'll name it and then I'll put my hand on my heart and just offer a message like, it's okay. And if you want to be really experimental now, you might just try touching the heart area lightly and sending some message of kindness to yourself. And just notice what that's like. Notice what happens when you're simply naming what's here and offering kindness to it. Naming what's here and offering kindness. the gift of these two wings of mindful attention are that there can be a shift in our sense of our identity. We can shift from being the fearful self, the victimized self, to really opening into that awareness that's intrinsically kind and open. Just take a few more breaths, feeling your own presence, and knowing that you can bring these two wings to your experience in any moment. Now, last kind of piece I want to cover with you is that the way that we bring these qualities of attention inward, I sometimes think of them as attend and befriend. In an evolutionary sense, we're going from fight, flight, freeze to attend and befriend. As we do it inwardly, we are activating the parts of the brain, the regions of the brain that actually help us attune to other people more deeply. We're activating our capacity for compassion, for empathy. And in contrast, when we are in reactivity, when we've flipped a bit, when we're hijacked, we're actually cut off from our capacity to really attune to others. I heard this story from a Unitarian minister who describes a family trip, and they're traveling on Christmas Day with their two children, and they stop at a restaurant, and she plunks her son, Eric, into the high chair, and he starts saying, hi there, 2 words he thought were one. And she looks at what the source of his merriment is, and she can't take it in all at once. I'm going to read you what she writes. She says, a tattered rag of a coat, baggy pants, both they and the zipper at half-mast over a spindly body, gums as bare as Eric's, and his hands flapping in the air, flapping about on loose wrists. Hi there, baby. Hi there, big boy. I see you, Buster. My husband and I exchanged a look that was a cross between what do we do and poor devil. Eric continues to laugh and answer, hi there. Every call was echoed. This old geezer was creating a nuisance with my baby. I shove a cracker at Eric, and he pulverized it on the tray. I whispered, why me, under my breath. Our meal came and the nuisance continued. Now the old bum was shouting from across the room, do you know patty cake? Do you know peekaboo? Hey, look, he knows peekaboo. We ate in silence, except Eric, who's running through his repertoire for the admiring applause of a Skid Row bum. Finally, we had enough, and Dennis went to pay the check, imploring me to get Eric and meet me in the parking lot. I trundled Eric out of the high chair and looked toward the exit. The old man sat poised and waiting, his chair directly between me and the door. Lord, just let me out of here before he speaks to me or Eric. I head to the door. It soon becomes apparent that both the Lord and Eric have other plans. As I draw closer to the man, I turn my back, walking to sidestep him and any air he might be breathing. And as I did so, Eric leaned over in his pick-me-up position. In a split second of balancing, Eric was lunging for him, arms spread wide. The bum's eyes both asked and implored, would you let me hold your baby? There's no need to answer. Eric propelled himself into the man's arms. And suddenly, a very old man and a very young baby were involved in a love relationship. Eric laid his tiny head on the man's ragged shoulder. The man's eyes closed, and I saw tears hover beneath his lashes. His aged hands full of grime, he stroked my baby, and I stood awestruck. He said to me, you take care of this baby, and somehow I managed I will from a throat that contained a stone. He pried Eric from his chest, unwillingly, longingly, as though he was in pain. I held my arms open to receive my baby, and again the gentleman addressed me. God bless you, ma'am. You've given me my Christmas gift. I said nothing more than a muttered thanks. With Eric back in my arms, I ran for the car, and Dennis wondered why I was crying and holding Eric so tightly, and why I was saying, my God, forgive me. I wanted to end with this story for an important reason. The Dalai Lama said, my religion is kindness. He described compassion as really the hope for our world. And as we practice these two wings of awareness, we wake up, instead of being stressed and seeing others as what I call unreal others, where we really are just seeing their mask, we start seeing the beauty, the vulnerability, and the mystery of who's here. And really, in a way, if we could all slow down and pause, create that clearing, and just begin to notice what's happening in the moment and open our hearts to it, we'd end up being in a world that was much more filled with peace, much more filled with an open, awake human heart. So closing prayer, if you will, just as a contemplation, you might close your eyes. In the name of daybreak, the eyelids of morning, and the wayfaring moon, and the night when it departs, I swear I will not dishonor my soul with hatred, but offer myself humbly as a guardian of nature, as a healer of misery, as a messenger of wonder, as an architect of peace. In the name of the sun and its mirrors and the uttermost night and the crowning seasons of the firefly and the apple, I will honor all life, wherever and in whatever form it may dwell, on earth my home and in the mansions of the stars. Thank you, and bless you all.